There's a type of man who unsettles the world, not with aggression or loudness, but with a steady presence that cannot be shaken, not by stress, not by chaos, not by other people's weakness disguised as pressure. A man so still inside that storms break around him and never through him. The Vikings called this kind of soul a stand-a-marder, a man who stands like a pillar of winter stone. They believed immovability wasn't a talent, but a method, a forge, a discipline beaten into the spirit the way iron is hardened in cold water. And now, you're about to learn the ancient structure that carved such men into existence. This isn't about bravado or pretending to be a warrior. It's about building the kind of inner spine that keeps you calm in crisis, firm in conflict, and rooted when everything tries to pull you off center. Viking stillness isn't achieved through heroic actions. It's achieved through embarrassingly small rituals that your ego will try to dismiss. But those tiny, relentless acts are what shape a man who cannot be moved by panic, anger, guilt, or insecurity. They create a presence that forces others to confront the fragility of their own discipline. Before we begin, you must accept one truth. People fear the immovable man. Once you stop bending, stop reacting, stop shifting yourself to avoid discomfort, you stop being easy to control. Some will resent you. Some will accuse you of being cold. Some will test you, hoping you'll break. But that resistance is proof you're on the right path. The Vikings built immovability by training themselves every dawn through rituals of breath, silence, oath, and repetition until they carried an axis inside them that nothing external could twist. Before we enter the first chapter, follow the tradition of the old shield halls. Make a public vow. In the comments below, declare the smallest action you will perform every dawn for the next 14 days. A tiny rite that proves your word has weight. When you declare it publicly, it becomes an oath, and Vikings believed the world punished those who broke their oaths. Make your vow, then return here. Because now the story begins. The story of a man who drifted through life without a center until a Viking elder taught him how to become unmovable. Leifur Arnsson was 41, a technician who looked stable to the outside world but hollow to himself. His problem wasn't a weakness of body, it was a weakness of structure. He bent too easily, changed direction too quickly, and folded whenever pressure arrived. Every Monday he promised himself he would become more disciplined, more firm, more decisive. By Wednesday, the promises were gone. He wasn't respected for his softness, nor admired for flexibility. He was simply predictable in the worst way, a man who adjusted himself to avoid discomfort. Life punishes men who lack a spine, and Leifur felt that punishment daily. The moment that exposed his reality arrived quietly. During dinner, his teenage son asked, "Dad, why do you always change your mind?" Leifur forced a laugh, but the question wounded him more deeply than any insult. His son didn't see him as reliable, not as consistent, not as solid. Just a man whose decisions wavered like reeds in the river wind. That night, Leifur lay awake, confronted by a truth he had avoided. He wasn't trusted because he wasn't anchored. He changed too often, surrendered too quickly, retreated too easily. He had become a man others expected to fold. He turned to books, quotes, online lectures, each promising strength, each dissolving when real pressure returned. Advice is easy until life pushes back. What Leifur lacked wasn't motivation, it was identity. He needed a structure strong enough to hold him when his own emotions tried to pull him apart. Then a co-worker mentioned an old Icelandic immigrant named Hrafn, a man known for teaching steadiness to men who kept collapsing under their impulses. The co-worker said only one thing: he doesn't teach bravery, he teaches stillness. Desperate, Leifer drove to Hrafn's cabin, a frost-bitten structure beside a river that seemed older than the town itself. Inside, the old man sat sharpening a bone-handled knife with slow, exact motions. He didn't welcome Leifer with kindness. He simply studied him, as if reading the shape of his weakness. Then he said, "You are not here because you are weak. You are here because you have no pillar." Leifer felt the words land like a hammer. Hrafn leaned forward. A man without an inner pillar is moved by everything: fear, mood, opinion, weather. That ends today. Sit, the forging begins. Hrafn wasted no time with metaphors or soft introductions. Stillness, he said, is not silence, it is a command. He placed a small iron ring into Leifer's palm. It was cold, rough, undecorated, utterly plain. "This ring is your first anchor. You will hold it every dawn for 10 breaths. Leifer frowned. It sounded absurd. Hrafn smirked. "Good. Your ego hates small things. Big vows break easily. Small vows carve deep." Viking discipline, Hrafn explained, was built on micro-oaths. Tiny actions repeated relentlessly until they form identity. The immovable man starts with something so small that the old self cannot use excuses to escape it. Then Hrafn revealed his system. Stejastig, the standing steps, 5 identity-forging principles used by the Northmen. First was Urda calling, knowing the single thing you stand for when everything is taken away. Second was the small axe path, the way of microscopic, repeatable actions. Third was edge holding, the discipline of stopping before emotion drags you. Fourth was scar wisdom, accepting imperfection without collapsing or self-pity. Fifth was harder, faster, endurance so deep it becomes identity. These weren't techniques. They were the architecture of an internal pillar, the structure that allows a man to remain unmoved in storms. Hrafn explained the iron ring ritual with strict clarity. "At dawn," he said, "before your mind awakens fully, before your emotions begin to chatter, you hold the ring. 10 breaths, slow, steady. Your thoughts will wander. Bring them back. Your feelings will twitch. Hold firm. The point is not calmness. It is obedience." He tapped Leifer's chest with one finger. "Obedience to yourself." This, Hrafn said, was how Viking sailors anchored their minds during violent seas, by owning their breath before the waves demanded it. Internal possession preceded external command. Leifer left unconvinced. A ring? 10 breaths? But he tried. The first morning felt awkward. The second felt pointless. By the 6th morning, he noticed his body waking moments before the alarm, as if expecting the ritual. By the 10th, he reached for the ring automatically, and on the 14th morning, he realized something that startled him. He had not failed once. For the first time in years, he had kept a promise to himself. When he returned to Hrafn's cabin, the old man asked one question. "Are you ready to stand?" The first true battle began the moment the novelty faded. Holding the iron ring at dawn felt powerful for a week, then suddenly the old impulses returned with quiet vengeance. One morning, Leifer woke irritated, hungry, tired, and resentful of the cold air in his room. Everything in him wanted to skip the ritual because it felt trivial. He stood in the dark thinking, what does this even do? This was the moment Hrafn had warned him about. The weak man always negotiates with himself. Every rational excuse Leifer created felt convincing, yet each excuse was just fear wearing a mask. Throughout the days that followed, the internal resistance grew louder. Leifer was easily triggered, emotional in conversations, and reactive at work. Old patterns resurfaced with force. He would snap at minor inconveniences and then wonder why. The iron ring ritual did not calm him. It revealed him. Hrafn had explained that immovability begins by exposing the chaos inside, not suppressing it. When a man confronts his instability directly, all the noise he has ignored for years rises to the surface. The ritual was holding a mirror to Leifa's mind, and the reflection unsettled him. One evening he returned to Hrafn's cabin, frustrated and embarrassed. He admitted that he felt worse than before, less stable, more volatile. Hrafn listened without interrupting. Then he said, "This is the internal winter. Every man who seeks stillness must pass through it. Your emotions will thrash because they know they are losing control." Hrafn explained that immaturity is loud, discipline is quiet, and the transition between the two feels like breaking. He described it as the moment a ship leaves the harbour and meets its first real wave. The wave tests the structure. The next 2 weeks became a grind: ritual at dawn, reflection at midday, grounding at dusk. No magic, no sudden peace, just repetition. Some mornings, Leifa's mind begged him to skip the ritual and return to old comforts. Another morning, he felt a strange steadiness forming beneath the confusion. Slowly, with each breath, he stopped reacting to the inner noise. He did not win every battle, but he learned something crucial. Immovability is not the absence of chaos. It is the refusal to bow to it. Hrafn introduced the next phase, which he called the One Way, a sequence of daily rites designed to remove decision-making from the moments where weakness usually wins. Most men fail, he said, because they depend on feeling ready. The Vikings built strength by eliminating choices. Hrafn gave Leifa a strict morning order: rise before sunrise, hold the ring for 10 breaths, stand outside for 1 minute regardless of weather, then speak aloud the single principle he chose for the day. No variation, no creativity. The sequence was meant to carve grooves into his identity, like a blade carving a rune into iron. The first week was brutal. The cold morning air stung his skin. His breath came out uneven, and the urge to return to bed gnawed at him. The rituals felt pointless. Structure felt suffocating, but Hrafn had warned him. The first week reveals your dependence on comfort. The second week reveals your dependence on chaos. The third begins to show you the man beneath both. By the end of the first week, Leifa hated the routine but continued it. By the end of the second, something began to shift. The resistance was still there, but it weakened faster each day. During the third week, he noticed he no longer negotiated with himself. He simply rose, held the ring, stepped outside, spoke his principle, and began the day. The routine became less of a task and more of an identity. Structure replaced hesitation. The absence of choice became liberating. He no longer asked himself whether he felt ready or motivated. He no longer checked his mood before beginning. The sequence happened automatically, like a blacksmith who no longer thinks about how to swing his hammer. This was the beginning of becoming unmoved. By the fourth week, Leifa reached what Hrafn called surrender, a stage where discipline becomes instinctive. The ritual felt natural, almost inevitable. He felt less emotional noise in the mornings and more weight in his posture. His co-workers noticed he spoke differently, slower, more intentional. His family noticed he no longer contradicted himself or changed opinions to avoid tension. His anchor was forming. Hrafn explained that once rituals become automatic, they stop shaping behavior and begin shaping identity. And identity is the only thing strong enough to make a man immovable. Leifa soon learned that immovability was not built in the good days. Anyone can be steady when rested, calm, and undisturbed. The real test came when life disrupted his structure. One morning, he woke late after a restless night. His alarm had failed, his mind was fogged, and he felt the familiar pull of old habits. A weaker version of himself would have said the day was ruined, that he would begin again tomorrow. But Hrafin's voice echoed in his mind. The world respects continuity, not perfection. So Leifr stepped outside, held the ring, and performed his ritual even though it was imperfect. That choice changed everything. The following week, disruptions multiplied. His boss called unexpected early meetings. His sister needed help moving. His son had a school emergency. Each moment demanded flexibility, yet each threatened his new structure. At first, he felt frustration rising. He feared losing momentum, feared the collapse of progress. But then he remembered Hrafin's principle, known as the unbroken line. It meant that even if the ritual was shortened, altered, or performed under stress, it remained a line of continuity. The point was not flawless execution. The point was refusal to abandon the path. Slowly, Leifr realized the truth. Discipline is not about precision. It is about presence. Some mornings, he held the ring outside. Some mornings, he held it in his car before work. Once, he held it in a bathroom stall because it was the only quiet space he could find. The environment shifted, but the ritual did not die, and that consistency began to build something inside him that no one could see, but everyone could sense. Even on chaotic days, he felt anchored, not reactive. He was training the ability to remain himself regardless of circumstance. One evening, after an especially chaotic day, Leifr visited Hrafn again. He confessed that he had performed the ritual later than usual and felt like he had failed. Hrafn simply laughed. If you performed it, you did not fail. You refused to collapse. That is the difference between a drifting man and an anchored man. Leifr walked home thinking about that line. A drifting man lets disruption define him. An anchored man adapts without abandoning his core. For the first time in his life, Leifr realized he was becoming anchored. Hrafn introduced the next stage of immovability, something he called battle foresight. He explained that Vikings prepared for storms long before clouds gathered. They did not wait for hardship and then react. They planned for their own weakness ahead of time. A man who waits for difficulty to decide how he will behave is already lost. Hrafn told Leifr to list every situation where he had historically broken under pressure. Anger, uncertainty, guilt, embarrassment, social tension, fatigue. Each one had shaken him in the past. He wrote them all down, realizing how predictable his collapses truly were. With the list complete, Hrafn said, "Now you will create your pre-solutions. These are not reactions. They are decisions made in advance so that the moment never controls you." For anger, Leifr decided he would pause before speaking. For guilt, he would remind himself of his chosen principle for the day. For fatigue, he would perform a reduced version of the ritual rather than skipping it. For social pressure, he would give a clear no or a clear yes without wavering. Each pre-solution was simple, but together they formed a shield. They stripped negotiation from the moments that had always broken him. As the weeks passed, these pre-solutions began to show their value. His friends invited him to events he once felt obligated to attend, but that drained him. Instead of bending, he answered firmly without apology. His son challenged one of his decisions, and for the first time, Leifr held his ground calmly, instead of explaining himself endlessly. At work, he faced criticism without spiraling into self-doubt. He noticed how often people depended on his indecision, how others had benefited from his constant bending. Now those same people encountered someone who held his line. His family reacted first. His wife said he seemed quieter, not in a distant way, but in a solid way. His son remarked that he seemed more stable, as if decisions came from somewhere deeper. Even his co-workers stopped interrupting him mid-sentence. People were adjusting to his presence because his presence no longer shifted to fit theirs. This was the beginning of respect, the natural response to a man who is not easily moved. Hrafn explained that immovability is contagious. When one person holds their centre, others feel their own centre wobble. Leifr was learning what that meant. By the 7th month, the changes in Leifr were no longer small or subtle, they were structural. People around him sensed it long before he admitted it to himself. He no longer reacted to minor irritation. He no longer changed his opinion because someone pushed. His yes meant yes. His no meant no. He carried himself differently, not with arrogance, but with a quiet density that others felt when he entered a room. The man who once blended into conversations now shaped them with silence. Presence alone had become his language. This was the immovable centre Hrafn spoke of, but transformation always brings discomfort to others. Co-workers who once relied on manipulating his flexibility became uneasy. Friends who preferred the old agreeable version of him began testing him with subtle provocations. His newfound steadiness threatened their habits. When he refused to bend, some called him distant. Others accused him of changing too much. Hrafn prepared him for this. When you become anchored, the unanchored will try to pull you back into the drifting world. But Leifr no longer wavered. He was learning that true strength does not seek approval. One evening, he found himself in a heated conversation between two family members. Normally, he would have tried to mediate, soften, and please everyone, but this time he simply listened, clear and grounded. When both turned to him, expecting the old Leifr to take sides, he answered with calm clarity. He did not react emotionally. He did not rise to provocation. He did not attempt to rescue anyone from discomfort. For the first time, he acted as the still centre rather than the shifting branch. Afterward, his wife said, "You didn't budge." Her tone carried admiration. Leifr returned to Hrafn the following morning. The old man studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Your face has changed." The weak man flinches at pressure. The anchored man does not. Hrafn explained that Leifr had crossed the threshold. Discipline was no longer something he performed. It was something he was. He no longer depended on rituals to steady himself. The rituals had carved the structure inside him. Hrafn placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are becoming a man who cannot be moved." The shift in Leifr became most visible at home. One evening, his wife snapped a photo of him without warning. In the picture, he was sitting with his daughter at the kitchen table, listening intently while she explained a project she was working on. He wasn't distracted. He wasn't restless. He wasn't half present. He was centered, fully anchored in the moment. The photo sat beside an old one she kept tucked away, a younger Leifr staring at his phone while his son tried to tell him something important. 2 images, 2 different men. She showed him both and said softly, "This is who you have become." But the transformation reached further. His son began copying his morning routine without being told. His daughter started standing up for herself in school after watching how he held his ground. His wife said their home felt calmer, more grounded, as if someone was holding the invisible center of the family together. What Leifr had built inside himself radiated outward. Immobility was no longer just for him. It became something others leaned on. He understood now why Hrafn insisted that a man must stand. When a man stands, others gain permission to stand too. Leifr visited Hrafn one last time. The old man prepared tea without speaking. When they finally sat, Hrafn said, "I taught you nothing new. The pillar was always inside you. I only removed the noise that buried it." Leifr asked, "What do I do now?" Hrafn smiled. you pass it on, not by preaching, not by instructing, by standing. The world does not need more men who react. It needs men who remain. Leifer walked home in silence, feeling the weight of that truth settle into him like stone. And now the story turns to you. You who reach the end of this journey. You who know you bend too often, react too quickly, and collapse under pressure that should not break you. None of that defines you. What defines you is the next choice, the smallest anchor, the simplest daily vow that proves your word has weight. You are not asked to become unmovable today. You are asked to begin. Choose one tiny action at dawn. Perform it for 14 days. Make your public vow in the comments. Anchor yourself. The forging begins now. If you found strength or clarity in this story, support the forge that shapes it. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment declaring your first dawn action. Your presence keeps these stories alive, and your oath may be the first step toward becoming the man who cannot be moved.